Movies were the art form of the 20th century. In the first 100 years of cinema, film cameras not only captured history, the movies became a part of our history. Let's take a trip through the 20th century, from the golden age of silent movies to the chaos and turmoil of the present day, and take a look at some movies about people who made history. Action! We'll start with one of the most famous of all.
Marilyn Monroe was not just a movie star. Marilyn Monroe was an icon of the culture. Marilyn loved to make up stories of herself. And the story that she kept coming back to again and again and again was the story of herself as a fragile waif. She loved this, and that's the story she gave out to the press. That's the story she disseminated to the media.
There'll always be that fascination with this kind of fragile life.
The mystery of her hasn't really been solved, I think, of what that combination was that made her so that you couldn't take your eyes off of her.
You know, Marilyn did a very dangerous thing in post-war culture. It was a very buttoned-down culture. She brought out sensuality and sexuality, but she undermined it. She parodied herself. It was always, you know, she delivered it, but she took it back too. And that's genius.
At the beginning of the movie, it was the happiest moment in Marilyn's life. She'd married Arthur Miller. She was on her way to London to make this movie with Laurence Olivier.
So Laurence Olivier and Scarlett O'Hara herself, Vivian Leigh, are set to greet them. American acting royalty meeting British acting royalty.
I love this film, My Week with Marilyn, because it really describes how she wants to be taken seriously as an actress.
I'm in awe of your gift. We all are.
She's not real.
Then why not simply rely on your natural talents?
So are you saying you don't want me to act?
Marilyn, will you just try to be sexy? Isn't that what you do?
First of all, Olivier is an actor, first, last, and always. He was basically a stage actor who wanted to be a star, whereas Marilyn was a star who wanted to be an actress.
Let's cut it though.
Monroe saw herself as a fragile waif. The mother in and out of mental institutions, the father she never knew, foster homes, 12 of them, rape at 9 by a friend of the family, and of course the marriages that fell apart, the miscarriages in the marriages. She saw herself as a victim. And of course, America loves victim.
Oh, our daughter's so pretty. All little girls should be told how pretty they are. They should grow up knowing how much their mother loves them.
I was hooked into the performance, which was so understated. Yes, it's understated. And then I realized this is so psychologically right, because Marilyn, when Marilyn was on the set or off the set, she was there, but she wasn't there. Marilyn was in her mind. Marilyn lived in her mind, even when she was on parade.
What I came to realize was that how you commonly think of Marilyn Monroe, that was a character. That was a finely honed act.
Shall I be her?
More than Zanuck, more than Technicolor, more than CinemaScope, and more than the press, she created Marilyn Monroe. This movie has made history come alive, and it does it in an entertaining way.
Another celebrated performer, Madonna, takes the director's chair in W.E., an impressive period drama. W.E. tells the story of Wallis Simpson, the American socialite who created a worldwide scandal when she fell in love with the King of England. Their romance led to his abdication just at the outbreak of World War II.
The abdication crisis was an amazing moment in British history. For a king to set aside his crown was an incredible thing to have happened. For this to happen around marriage to an American divorcee, extraordinary. But the crisis opens up all these questions as to who's really in charge in Britain. It was an amazing moment in British history.
I was always fascinated by the story of the Duke and the Duchess. Every time I'd go out to dinner,
I'd bring up their name at a dinner party, and it would be like throwing a Molotov cocktail onto the table. Suddenly, the table would erupt, and everyone would get into an argument about who they were. As I read their story, my feelings toward them kept changing. One minute I was, enthralled and swept up in it, and then the next minute I was kind of irritated with them and thinking of them as superficial. And then the next minute I thought, oh my God, they're human beings like all of us. This guy gave up the throne. What drove him to do that? If it was for a woman and if it was for love, what did this woman have?
People have never really understood what he saw in her. How could she be so special that he would give up his crown in order to be with her?
To my grandma, she was just this sort of American woman who'd taken away this king who was the first king really to fight for the common man. I just remember thinking that her spirit must have been such that she was compelling enough that he needed to be with her.
You have no idea how hard it is to live out the greatest romance of the century.
Accessing Wallace Simpson's diaries, Wallace Simpson's letters, the idea of finding out what was actually going on in that relationship is a fascinating thing. So this is one of the great mysteries. Well, now we know. Now we can see inside that relationship.
People walk out of the theater and go, wow, I didn't know that about the Duke and the Duchess, or I didn't know that about Wallace Simpson, or I didn't think that way, or, I was in a relationship like that I couldn't get out of, or, whatever. If people can connect on any one of those levels, I'll be very happy.
Coriolanus. The acclaimed actor Ralph Fiennes has updated the hero of one of William Shakespeare's most powerful and timely tragedies. Fiennes has made a Shakespeare adaptation that feels like it is ripped from today's headlines.
The filming of Shakespeare for contemporary audiences can do remarkable work in bringing the poetry and the drama of a playwright who's been dead for almost 400 years to life.
Action!
Caius Marcius Coriolanus is a particular leader of renown, partly because of his military heroism. This is a man of quite extraordinary bravery and courage.
Coriolanus is a classic tragic hero.
If ever again I meet him, he's mine, or I am his.
I've always been attracted to this man who challenges an audience to resist him, but actually they come to see that he has a kind of integrity which is manipulated and destroyed by the world around him and by his own arrogance and his own pride.
What's thy name?
Knowest thou me yet?
I know thee not. Thy name?
My name is Caius Marcius, who hath done to thee particularly, and to all the Volsces great hurt and mischief. Thereto witness may my surname, Coriolanus.
There's so much in this film about the voice of the common people, the voice of the crowd, the way in which that voice expresses a sense of anger and injustice. I think it speaks to very contemporary issues.
The key things that I felt strong about was keeping it modern. That our Rome is not Rome, Italy. Our Rome could be lots of cities.
I found it very fascinating taking this traditional play and juxtaposing it with modern society, and yet I've been amazed how easy it has been to slip into that language and have it work in the context of where we are, and even using the modern weaponry, modern machinery.
There are some shocking moments of violence in this film, which I think do resonate extraordinarily with the kind of atrocities that were committed in Serbia and Bosnia. But the events of 2011 have certainly given the film an even greater sense of political purchase on its audience, and I think that makes the film all the more topical.
sweet as my revenge.
During a time when America's president, Ronald Reagan, was a former movie actor, the British Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, was a conservative dynamo who was known as the Iron Lady.
Mrs. Thatcher got the nickname the Iron Lady for a quite specific reason at a specific time. She'd made very soon after, well, within the first year of becoming Conservative leader, she made a very belligerent anti-Soviet Cold War speech. And it was the Soviet Army newspaper called Red Star, which called her the Iron Lady, which it intended as an insult. But of course it was absolutely the best thing it could possibly have done for her image, and it was never really an issue that she was a woman after that.
Welcome to the madhouse. One simply has to maximize your appeal.
Every day I wake up and I think, thank God I'm not the leader of the free world or something. But what a job.
Prime Minister? Oh, no. In Britain?
I feel very humble and daunted by the prospect of what she really took on her shoulders.
I don't expect to win the leadership, but I am going to run, just to shake up the party.
She took the opportunity to stand, and by sort of force of personality, people said, hey, this is a good idea. The Tory party had always been a sort of conservative party, but suddenly the idea of being the first party to have a woman leader was quite radical and quite attractive.
She was a conviction politician. So many of her most famous statements are statements about having absolute resolve. She said famously, the lady's not for turning. She was not going to be involved in U-turns. She was not going to be involved in compromise. She was not going to negotiate with terrorists. And for her party, that was her strength. And that's what she provided, was completely uncompromising leadership.
Gentlemen, if we don't cut spending, we will be bankrupt. We did not seek election and win in order to manage the decline of a great nation. The people of this country chose us because they believe we can restore the health of the British economy, and we will do just that.
The public responded to this uncompromising leader with uncompromising reactions. People loved her or people hated her. There were riots, there were strikes, and she met those strikes head on.
The rich get richer and the poor are irrelevant!
She had to be better than any man in that position in order to keep that position. And to watch the archival footage of her and to see how ready she was and how completely deep her preparation and how eager for the battle she was, wanting the fight. Boy, that appetite is thrilling.
Mrs. Thatcher had this great capacity that she didn't want to be liked. She wanted to do what was right, and she told people what was right, and people thought that was authoritarian and bullying at the time.
Your problem is that you haven't got the courage for this fight. You haven't had to fight hard for anything.
20 years later, they look back to a sense of politics being about something.
Many men have underestimated me before. This lot seem bound to do the same. But they will rue the day. That's the tone we want to strike.
Here we go. Rolling.
The Artist tells the story of a Hollywood star in the silent era who isn't ready for the transition to talkies. It is the great movie about love that reinvents silent movies for the modern day.
Hollywood in the 1920s is an interesting place. No one had ever built a business around the selling of dreams before. That's what movies became. They went from being kind of a carnival attraction to something that ignited the emotions of audiences. And there's a film grammar that is slowly evolving. So everyone is experimenting with this. And the silent comedians, Buster Keaton, Charles Chaplin, Harold Lloyd, they are the ones who really pioneered the grammar because they were looking to evoke emotions in the part of the audience. They wanted to tell a story. They wanted to make people laugh. They wanted to make people cry. They wanted to make them care. I think the genius of The Artist, the way that Michel Hazanavicius directed it, is that he's gone back to the way that silent films used film grammar in those early days. It uses the same camera work, it uses the same shot styles. It pieces its story together exactly as a silent film would have in 1927. So you very easily lose yourself in the film, and it's very easy to imagine that this is a film that was exactly made in that period. There's nothing about it that feels modern, and so it carries us back, it transports us, and I think that's part of the magic of the movie.
Hollywood is the character in the movie. Hollywood represents America and represents magic and hopefulness and possibility to an entire world now because they grew up on our pictures.
I don't think people now even realize just how momentous the ascent of cinema was when you consider that it really only started in the last few years of the 19th century. By the time we get to 1927, we're not even 30 years in, and it has become the biggest entertainment sensation in the history of humankind. That's a faster rise than even the internet in our day.
In 1929, the jazz singer made its appearance, and that was, of course, the first talkie with Al Jolson. So the wind of change is about.
Now they can talk, and everything that you thought was stable is now gone, and there's this entirely new craft where people have to be able to talk and dance and sing.
And of course, it's common knowledge that most of these great silent movie stars never had to use their voice, and their voices sometimes didn't fit their persona, and they were rejected and found it very difficult to cross over.
George Valentin is representative of a lot of actors who found themselves at the pinnacle of their careers in the late 1920s only to suddenly be faced with obsolescence by the early 1930s. I think Valentin represents that Douglas Fairbanks character, that actor who knew how to act without saying anything, who could captivate people just with the dialogue on his face. The Artist, it reminds you of a period when movies were everything. The one thing that has not changed is the way that a story can touch someone's heart. That's the magic of the movies.